Her world smelled of rain-soaked concrete, a damp, gritty scent that mingled with the acrid exhaust fumes of passing cars, a constant olfactory reminder of her existence. It was a scent as ubiquitous as the low, persistent hum of the city, a sound that felt less like a harmonious symphony, and more like a monstrous beast, trying to swallow itself whole. For Ilara, every single day was a battle, a desperate, grinding fight for a warm meal that wouldn't leave her stomach hollow, a silent fight for a shred of dignity in a world that saw her as nothing more than an inconvenient shadow. The deep cold was a constant companion, an ache that had seeped into her bones, into the very marrow, becoming as much a part of her as her own skin. But even the world's relentless cruelty could not take one thing from her, her music. Her guitar was a splintered, scarred piece of wood, a battered testament to countless nights of hardship. Its neck was worn smooth where her fingers had pressed down 1,000,000 times, and it was held together with a desperate will and a single rusty string or two. She didn't simply play songs. She bled them, an unfiltered and agonizing outpouring of her very essence. Every broken, imperfect chord was a tear shed for a life she didn't have, a tear for the past she couldn't outrun. Every raw lyric was a raw prayer whispered to the indifferent, empty sky above. When she sang, she wasn't just performing for spare change. She was unraveling. The gnawing pain, the burning hunger, the deep shame, it all poured out of her. An endless torrent of pure emotion carried on a voice that was utterly, heartbreakingly honest. It was the defiant, beautiful sound of a spirit refusing to be crushed. This is the sound that found Liam. His world was a different kind of emptiness, one filled with the sterile, polished perfection of a high-end recording studio. The quiet, almost clinical hum of expensive, state-of-the-art equipment was the constant noise. The polite, rehearsed voices of the artists he worked with were like perfectly tuned instruments with no soul, no grit, no life. As a music producer, he had heard everything the industry had to offer. He could tell you the exact decibel of a perfect pitch, but he felt nothing in the process. His entire existence was a polished, pre-packaged version of success. He was wealthy beyond measure, respected in every professional circle, and yet he was utterly, completely numb, a hollow man in a gilded cage. Had heard everything the industry had to offer. He could tell you the exact decibel of a perfect pitch, but he felt nothing in the process. His entire existence was a polished, pre-packaged version of success. He was wealthy beyond measure, respected in every professional circle, and yet he was utterly, completely numb, a hollow man in a gilded cage. Then he saw her. He had been walking aimlessly, the noise of a city he didn't feel a part of filling his ears. On a grimy street corner, under a flickering street lamp that cast a ghostly, unreliable light, stood this girl. A girl with fire in her eyes and a song that defied the city's noise, cutting straight through it all and into his very chest. Her voice cracked on high notes, a small human flaw that made the sound even more beautiful, even more real. It was a raw, beautiful chaos that shattered his polished, ordered world into 1,000,000 tiny pieces. In that single moment, he didn't see poverty. He saw a hurricane of talent, a force of nature waiting to be unleashed. He walked away from his meaningless life that night and into hers, a silent, unshakable compulsion guiding him. Their love story wasn't a fairy tale. It was a brutal, beautiful collision. He offered her a new life, a world of gleaming microphones, soundproof rooms, and endless possibilities. But with every new comfort came a new, insidious kind of pain. The moment she stepped into the echoing marble foyer of his mansion, she felt the invisible, stark lines drawn between their two worlds. His mother's cold, appraising stare followed her everywhere, a silent, constant judgment. His father's condescending remarks about her rough upbringing were a poison, a constant reminder that she didn't belong. They saw her past, her poverty, as a stain, a kind of disease that might infect their pristine family. Ilara began to feel less like a person and more like a project, an experiment in a gilded cage. They wanted to smooth out her rough edges, to sand away the grit and the pain that made her who she was, to turn her into another perfect, polished, soulless artist for the masses. The pressure began to tear them apart, the chasm between their worlds growing wider with every passing day. He couldn't begin to understand the deep humiliation she felt, the constant, low-level shame of not belonging, of being judged and found wanting. He couldn't fathom why she would want to hold onto the very things he saw as the source of her suffering, and she couldn't understand why he was so willing to let his family's open disdain and cruelty poison the fragile love they had found. "You don't get it," she screamed at him one night, tears of frustration streaming down her face, the words like shattered glass. "You want to save me, but all you're doing is trying to change me. My pain, my struggle, that's who I am. That's where the music, the real music, comes from. It's not something you can just wash away." The words hung in the air between them, a raw, undeniable truth neither of them wanted to face. She felt like she was losing herself in his world, a world where her pain was seen as a flaw to be fixed. He was terrified that he was the one causing it, the one who was destroying the very thing he had loved. With a broken heart and a soul that felt bruised and weary, she ran. She ran back to the only place that made sense, the street corner where it all began. The familiar chill and the hard, unforgiving ground were a strange comfort, a silent confirmation of her truth. And this is where he finally found his. He didn't come with a shiny limousine or a lucrative contract. He didn't come to save her from anything. He simply came to listen, to witness. He stood in the deep shadows across the street, as she played her old, battered guitar and sang a new song, a song born of this fresh pain, this new heartache that was even sharper than the old ones. Her voice was even more broken now, more raw, more real. And as he listened, truly listened, he finally understood. He didn't love her in spite of her brokenness. He loved her because of it. He loved the grit and the fire and the unapologetic honesty that made her who she was. He walked up to her not as her producer or a man from a better world, but just as Liam. He didn't say a word, didn't offer an excuse. He just knelt and took her cold hand in his. That night, under the indifferent glare of the cold city lights, they finally found a home in each other, a home not defined by wealth or poverty, by his world or hers, but by the shared, beautiful, and utterly raw sound of two souls fighting to stay true to who they are. Together, 234,